Uncle Ron stuff. I know I keep doing this, partly as I'm trying to get the blue screen to work, or green screen to work properly in the background. As you can see, I'm getting it better all the time. It's still, there's some green around the edges. Lighting is part of it. Anyway, I keep making these things. I don't know, just throwing out into. It's actually not being radiated. It's being put into electrons that are moving around the internet wires, and maybe even over the air from one place to another. Cables across the Atlantic. Bizarre. Anyway, today is I got an email the other day, and I don't know who from. Probably some. Anyway, the question, the subject matter was, is life for purpose or pleasure? Is life for purpose or pleasure? Now, you can say, well, that's a pretty, I don't know the proper term. It's not a good model. It breaks it down too simple, for sure. It's not an either or, for sure. But anyway, the concept is interesting, purpose or pleasure. And what hit me, I think, most important was that I fall in the purpose category. For somewhere at some time, I found that my self-identity and I feel best about myself and all that sort of stuff if I focus on purpose. My purpose is to do things, share things, learn things, fix things, do. If I do, my purpose is doing, okay? As opposed to pleasure. Now, I've started taking more pleasure, if you will, and one form of pleasure is I watch videos, I watch a lot of movies, and it's a mindless sort of activity, and sometimes a movie has a particular aspect to it that triggers a thought, and underneath of all that pleasure is still some aspect of purpose, and that is, what is my purpose here? Or how does this whole thing work? How is this whole reality working? And I'm interested in physics and interested in quantum mechanics and have interest in a spiritual aspect of there are things that don't fall into a very neat category. And from a physics point of view, I do understand that there is energy and simple vacuum space. There's nothing there. That space does have a fundamental energy state in it that perhaps is modulated, vibrated, string theory, however you want, that allows for all this to come about. And I think one of my purposes is still to try to understand this sort of reality from a certain perspective, and from another reality try to understand or grok or feel the spiritual side of it. A lot of people believe in God, a lot of people believe in a spiritual life, a moral life, and that doesn't fall on the pleasure side. It just falls underneath my, again, a purpose side. I got to have purpose. And I read a lot of blogs on various websites, and it'll be people who seem to have, they're lost. They wake up in the morning and they go to bed at night and they're just lost. They're actually, I think, depressed in a way, because I don't know what they're trying to search for. Perhaps it's a purpose. Maybe that's the point, is they're not be satisfied or happy or content until they can clearly define a purpose. Now, a lot of people, for purposes of whatever work they do, someone that works 30 years at a particular job, maybe that's their purpose. I can't see how a factory worker in a GM automobile plant putting some kind of component on a car as it comes down the line, that provides a significant enough purpose for him to be happy and content. I could be totally wrong about that. For me, it would not work. I don't know what does work for me, but I have found that if I stray away from purpose, I have periodically just strayed away and say, well, it's time for some pleasure here. I need some pleasure. That it can be dangerous for me because I don't seem to have a real good idea what to do over there, what the boundaries are, what the my limitations are, so on and so on and so on. Anyway, the basic question, purpose or pleasure? And it's, yeah, a terrible dichotomy. That's not really true. Let's start off with purpose. That one I can grok pretty well. I understand the purpose aspect of it. But there has to be other aspects. Forget the pleasure side. I think that's the wrong word to put there. But as a gradient from, the guy, I can't remember his name, who was forever banned to be pushing this rock up this hill. And as he got close to the very top, his feet would slide or something, and the rock would roll back down to the bottom. And his purpose was, that's all he had, that's all he was, all he ever would be, is just pushing this rock back up this hill for it to only come back down at the bottom. As far as I didn't talk about how frustrating that must be, but it had to have been part of that equation, right? I mean, how could it not be? Purpose. Okay, beyond purpose, what else is there? Understanding. I have, maybe that's a purpose. I have a desire for understanding. I have a desire for knowing or learning or something about what this is all about. It's so strange, this living, this reality we're in. The complexity of it in terms of species, the complexity of it in terms of a universe we're aware of, why the sky is blue, what rain, all these sorts of strange aspects. Human relationships is a big one. I don't understand. Some people seem to be so locked up and tight under fundamental beliefs that you can't really talk to them about anything because it goes against what they are. So it's ingrained. The true believer in a particular aspect of living. And again, I'm probably guilty of the same thing, and that purpose. Purpose gives me reason for living every day. It's really dumb. I admit it. Guilty as charged. Dumb. Purpose, and then what? Pleasure. Pleasure is can have a lot of different aspects and meaning to it. The first one comes to mind is sexual pleasure. It is true that there is a pleasure. You get body sensations of pleasure, I think. And pleasure is not just simply a body sensation, but perhaps something that gives you joy is pleasure. I don't know if it, like when I accomplish something, I seldom take joy in it. It's just another thing to do and move on to the next one. Kind of like that guy pushing that boulder up the hill. I have different kind of boulders, and I'm always pushing up the hill. Sometimes I get them to the top and I leave them there and I come walk back down and there's another one there and I have to push it back up the hill. And it's a never-ending sort of cycle. Everything needs maintenance, so I've got plenty to do. And I'll always have plenty to do until I can't do it anymore. And that is a question to be probed and feared, is that what if you couldn't do much of anything anymore? Perhaps your mind slips and slides and you can't, don't even know the answer 2 + 2 anymore, that, I don't know. Purpose or pleasure. It's an interesting think about. I doubt most people care, but for me it was worse an exploration. I think I mentioned in one other video I went to a talk therapist for a long time, and he wasn't very particularly helpful, so I would go into the therapy session with something like this in mind, pleasure or purpose. And I would start talking about it out loud and listening to myself say certain things and then following a train of thought off of what I just said out loud because something didn't quite seem right about it, or I didn't understand exactly what I thought about what I just said. I don't know if you're like that or not. Talking out loud, and my wife does it all the time. When she's by herself, she talks out loud. And I think it's for that sort of purpose, and that when you say it out loud, you hear it, then you might, some aspect of it doesn't particularly ring true, or some aspect of it gives you an uncomfortable feeling, or something that says, I need to think some more about it. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. I don't know if that is a common thing or not. I do not talk out loud to myself often, other than to these things, which I imagine there are people out there somewhere. I don't know. Or the future is out there. Perhaps I'm talking to someone far, far, far in the future. I have I've had pieces on the web that are now 20 years old. So from that perspective, back then I was in fact talking into the future. I don't know if anybody will ever stumble across it and find it worthwhile. This is another case where I don't know what I'm doing, of course, but that's okay. I'm killing time. That's another one, interesting. When you have time on your hands, what do you do with it? You just kill time. One of the Grateful Dead songs is, if you want to know the future, just look what's in your hands. It's like, what are you currently doing? And how are you doing it? That gives you some aspect. Whatever's in your hands is probably, or what you do in your spare time, is probably where your whole being sort of gravitates toward it. There is a gravity pull of whatever that may be. It may be music or writing, or being around other people is really, 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 really important to you, and so you spend a lot of time with friends and conversing with them, and that's, perhaps what your future will look like, that aspect of it. My future, I don't know. Way back in there, I always have trouble with this reverse angle thing. See, way, way back in there, it's interesting how my arm stretches way, way back into the background, isn't it? I mean, I found it, that I'm way, 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 way back there. If I could probably get up and walk back in there. This is the green screen stuff. Anyway, purpose or pleasure. Purpose or dump the purpose and say God, church, faith, or most important aspect of your being is your faith. Faith in God, faith in Christ, a faith in an afterlife, a faith in that gives you a purpose. Purpose is one of those nebulous words that everybody knows what it means, but nobody does. It's an ill-defined abstraction. It's not concrete. This is a lighter, will always be a lighter. Some people won't recognize this because it's awful big, but it does have the overall shape, and its purpose is pretty well defined. You can see the flame coming off of it. Purpose. An object with a set of parameters and characteristics about it, and one of them is, what is its purpose? Now when you see a human, you don't really think that. What's the purpose of that human? You meet them on the street, you see somebody walking by and you go, wonder what their purpose is. You don't do that. I don't do that. When I get to talking to them, I don't really explore what their purpose is. I don't ask them right up front, what do you do for a living? I don't do that. I'm more interested, like, well, where were you born, and what was it like when you were growing up, and what's your favorite things to do, and did you ever eat have you ever eaten alligator meat? And I don't know, that's what I tend to do. And following a trail of their responses, I try to get deeper and deeper into their psyche and try to understand how they think about things, a little bit of everything. And I think thinking, and I've talked about it in a bunch of videos about thinking, thinking is not the same sort of abstraction. Thinking, again, is another one of those nebulous words. Everybody knows what it means and nobody knows what it means. There's been a lot of thought put into what thinking's about with no real answer. How do you, or creativity, or all these other words that are nebulous. We all know what they mean, but nobody knows what they mean. Everybody knows what a lighter is. Well, they probably don't know what a lighter is in some foreign country or in the Amazon rainforest. They don't know this word. They don't know this object. They don't know its meaning. Purpose or pleasure. I just thought it was an interesting email, and it did send me off on a little bit of exploration. And very clearly what hit me as I started off with was the purpose. It's very ingrained in me. My purpose is doing. I have to do something of consequence to feel like I'm worthy of living another day. And that is really ridiculous. I don't know where that came from, but there it is. This is Uncle Ron's stuff. Today is the 27th of February, and I promise soon I'll be done with these things. I still have to solve one sort of issue associated with green screen, and then I'll lay off these things for a while. And that's it for today. I hope everybody's having a great day of some kind and having some pleasure mixed in with purpose.